I don't think we all need to be completely well-rounded. I think if we can harness and understand our skills, it gives us the opportunity to harness the power of what we know really well, and also in some ways focus on the things that we want to grow. And I think if we're not growing, then there's an issue there, because then we've hit a blocker, or we've hit something that's going to hinder us.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edit Undo podcast, and we have got a banger of an episode today. We have got the illustrious Igshaan Robinson with us today, also known as Iggy. And I think this is going to be a super cool conversation because there are a number of things that are coming up in the very near future, especially when you're listening to this episode, that you should definitely look out for. And that is the UX Southafrica conference. Now, there's a lot that we'll get into during this discussion, but I think the thing that's maybe super interesting is that he is not a UX designer by trade. That is something that I was super surprised about, and I hope to learn a little bit more about. But before that, Iggy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Stephanie, Alfie, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've been a fan of the podcast for a while, so there's a few friends who's been on, and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. This is the first podcast that I was like, I really want to have a chat with those guys, and I thought it was overdue. We've been chatting, and I thought, yeah, thank you for having me.
Nice.
I'm excited. I am a bit anxious. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm anticipating, these questions. Alfie was putting questions on his. If you put questions on your Instagram story saying, let's ask this guy questions, it's really you saying, give me the bullets. Give me the bullets,
Where's
guys.
the ammo at? Where's the dirt?
But I'm down, because one of the biggest things that UX Southafrica, or that Theo and I try to push, is obviously transparency, especially with the community, because we are only here because of the community. We can only continue to do this because of the community, the attendance, the interest. So, it's not about holding back. It's about whether the truth is acceptable.
And we definitely on the same page there. I was just saying to Alfie, I think this podcast has made me very comfortable to look very shit sometimes on camera because we just want to be transparent, and sometimes it's been a long day. Like there's been episodes where we've recorded at 10 p.m. and I'm not a evening person, and I don't look like an evening person, and you don't hide it.
I think I need to think about what kind of person I am. I've always been asked whether I'm a morning person, but that evening question is quite interesting. That's a good one. I need to think about whether I'm an evening or an afternoon person.
Yeah. Well, I'm a not morning person. That's definitely me. Like the morning, my brain is always slow. I'm working on that, but we work with what we have, I guess.
I think I guess in the space that we operate, so we operate at different hours, and we try to make things work. I think some people try to make it work in their professional lives, and some people, like yourselves, go a bit and beyond, and you try to create things that is based on knowledge sharing, information, exploring, and I think unfortunately the trade-off is time. But if it's more of a passion, then you don't feel it as much. That's my belief, I think, at least. And because for UX Southafrica is more of a passion for me than anything else. I always describe it as my passion.
That's
when
amazing.
when I say it's my passion, it's about the community. Like I get so emo about the community. It's unreal. And it's not that I want to fight for the community, because people need to fight for themselves. But at the same time, if I can fight in a place where people can't fight, then I'm going to do that. So, I guess the thing that we're fighting for is, how do we get more conversations going? How do we get people to connect more? How do we focus more on Africa and South Africa? So it's all of those. I just brought it back there.
And I definitely I definitely want to dive into that a lot, because actually in the last episode that we recorded, we were speaking to an artist from Kenya, and we touched on that subject a little bit. So we'll definitely dive into that. But I think before we do, let's get everyone to know you a little bit. Like before this UX South Africa thing, before that was on the table, like what was the story
how
from?
How far back do you want to go? Let's go way
what's your
back.
day job?
What's this way back machine kind of thing? So day job 9 to 5 is product manager, analyst. I like those kind of things. So I like the detail. I like understanding what the big picture is and how the detail complements it. So I guess the analyst side speaks to the detail, and the product management speaks to the management of the detail, but understanding the bigger picture. That's how I see the two roles and how it fits in my head. That's my day job. It's always been for the last, I've been in digital. I'm calling it digital as an umbrella term for about almost 20 years now, which is really cool. 3 years shy. Then I'll be 20. I'm going to celebrate my 21st the second time. And with that, I think my understanding and of design first has evolved. So before I got to, maybe I'll just jump into some history now. Before I jumped into this idea of UX and UCD and HCI and all of that stuff, it was very much design focused, because I've always appreciated art, design, creative things, and that's because of influence from my dad and other people and getting to know artists in the world, it's that kind of side of me. And that's why I like Crazy Caps. And I think you can see at the back. And after, I think it was 2010, 2011, I started getting a better handle of design in South Africa. But when I was working at an agency in Cape Town, and I'll always say, so Darren Ferreira was the guy that I say sparked my interest in UX. And I think if he didn't, it's just this one sentence he said, just that one sentence. And I told you, Alfie, like in Matrix, I took the red and the blue pill and I said, let's go, I was like, I don't care whether this knocks me down or it picks me up. I'm like, I'm down. So that the one sentence that, and so we were sitting in a meeting and we were reviewing designs. It was actually wireframes, and we were sitting, and it was obviously for a project and looking at progress and so on. And then we were speaking, and somehow he said, Iggy, this isn't UX. This isn't all that UX is about. And it was that question that took me on this journey, because he said UX is way more than just this designs and this wireframes, and there's so much more. But unfortunately, we don't do as much as that. And I want to, and I'm trying to. And we went into that side of the discussion. But what stuck with me was that, okay, if this isn't UX, and you're saying it's so much more, I really want to know what else it's about. Yeah. And when I started, it was 2012, and I started reading so much. He obviously told me about the Lukes and the Normans and the Dons and the Brads and all of those people, But I was reading for, I guess, almost a year, and another good friend of mine, she was also embarking this UX kind of things, and we could trade understanding, right? And then when it got to the point in 2013 where I was like, I'm asking so many questions, and at that point I'd done the strategy and the foundations course with Flow Design, and that was one course was with Phil and the other course was with Rian, and and that obviously piqued my interest more. But it was now at the point where I was asking questions and I didn't know who could answer them. The only answer that the answers were coming from Google. They were coming from forums. They were coming from other sites. I didn't know. I knew Phil and Rian were doing stuff, and I started getting to know some of the other names like Jason Hobbs. But the issue that I started having was, and fuck it, it's male heavy, it was big, and I was thinking, is this another PHP and Java where it's just a big sausage fest, and I'm thinking like, nah, man, like what's going on? And the questions I started formulating was, who in Africa is doing this? Who in South Africa is speaking about UX? And these questions that I'm asking, who can I ask these questions to? Who can I turn to? Who are the females and the women in this? Because we're speaking about touchy-feely. Touchy-feely is not part of the bro code. We're not as kids maybe let's just separate quickly. As boys, you're always taught masculinity from the beginning. Don't cry, boys don't cry. You're taught things like that. Yeah. And even if you're in a family that practices that you shouldn't say those kind of things, there's still individuals in your family that say that. So one way or another, boys are always exposed to the idea of you need to be masculine, and the idea of empathy is not part of that syllabus. So now we're speaking about UX, and you're telling me I need to feel stuff and create stuff that make people feel. What is going on? So I'm asking all of these questions. And then Phil said, I think you need to speak to someone. You need to meet this guy. So he says, I need to meet Theo. And we meet at the Seattle in Cavendish. And it was like a date, at night. It was like a planned date. and then we're speaking, and Theo was in events. He was creating events. He was starting a PHP conference, and we're like, let's start a UX conference. He wasn't completely sold in relation to the understanding that he had formulated about PHP and Java, or back-end coding and so on, and front-end coding, or coding in general, as opposed to UX. But he was like, okay, let's see where this goes. He's interested. And I think that was all we needed, man, was someone that was interested and hopeful to help make this happen. And I guess here we are 8 years later. Still very much community focused. I think like COVID has impacted us though, in terms of understanding. It's made us aware of the fact that we need to try and do more. We need to see what we can do more, how we can be more inclusive. But in order to do that, we need to see how we can get people to participate with the brand, not necessarily with an individual, because we want UX South Africa to be a brand that people can trust in more.
So I have so many, I have so many questions, so many comments.
Go for it.
I'm very intrigued with what you said about the feminine energy or feminineness in us, and then the masculinity. And it's so funny that I've actually never made that observation or thought about it. Yes, I'm very aware as a female that it's a very male-dominated space for sure. But I've never really thought about, like you said, a lot of the characteristics, the methodologies that we practice, such as compassion, thinking about feelings and emotions, labeling emotions, that's a very in line with the feminine side of us. And it does make me think a little bit about the male UX designers or UX people I've worked with. And if I've seen that the male UX designers being a little bit more system thinking and the female designers a little bit more of the compassionate holding side of UX, because you do get both, right? You get the system part of UX, and then you get the, like you said, the empathetic part of it. I definitely think I'm on this on the empathy, compassion, emotion side of it, which is quite fascinating. I don't know, Alfie, have you thought about it in this way or observed it at all?
I think I have thought about it as well. Like I've got like a fleeting interest in the psychology department, and so because of that, I've had a little bit of an interest. Because like in some ways, and I mean, Iggy, the example that you gave is so right, because there was a time in society where there were people who actually had to go out and face scary things, and showing fear was a problem. When you're facing down, like, a jaguar or something like that, you want to be able to put yourself forward as something, relatively threatening. And so fear doesn't actually have a utility. But in the society that we live, that there's actually value in being able to relate with another person's emotions and understand the things that they're going through. And through doing that, understand their values. Exactly. And in some sense, and one of the areas where I really see that is in UX research and in how people think about research. Because one of the things I found is some of the people who are stronger in the system sort of thinking struggle a little bit with executing research. Because it's sort of like you have to go all the way down to the detail of what's happening and the person that you're sitting in front of and engaging with them like directly. And in a sense, the systems lens to things is maybe a lot more high level and a lot less related to the person-to-person engagement. And so I think that's one of the things that I've seen. And also even just looking at the areas where I struggle is like, it sort of falls within those same categories. Like I'm maybe a little bit more on I think I'm actually a little bit of a weird case, because I find I'm strong in some of the aspects of systems, like thinking, and weak in others, and then also strong in some of the aspects of the empathy side and weak in others. So it's kind of like
that's
a toss-up.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think we all need to be completely well-rounded. I think if we can harness and understand our skills, it gives us the opportunity to harness the power of what we know really well, and also in some ways focus on the things that we want to still grow. And I think if we're not growing, then there's an issue there, because then we've hit a blocker, or we've hit something that's going to hinder us. Like my personal belief is until I'm 6 foot, I'm always going to be growing. That's such a weird thing to say. 6 foot down, 6 foot under, 6 foot under. Until I'm 6 foot under. I'm always going to want to be growing, And the thing is, maybe it's, for me, people think, I need to be growing and it needs to be academically. No, bruh. There's more, there's other growing. There's emotional growing. There's spirit, nowadays more and more people are becoming more spiritual, because the understanding, the closeness between spirituality and your emotional state. And there's many people that are spiritual that feel an imbalance. And when they tie that together, they're like, okay, I'm 2.0 now, let's go. Because they understand a bit more about themselves. So growth is not only about textbooks. This idea of a certification proves that I've grown is absolute BS. Just because you have a certificate behind your name doesn't mean that you understand or that you can feel. It means that you've understood what the textbook has said and that you've passed an exam, but that's it. Textbook don't teach you how to feel. People teach you how to feel. The world teaches you how to feel. The world was crafted on emotion. It wasn't crafted on wars. And it wasn't crafted. Wars are the actions based on the emotions that these crazy people felt, right? The Mongols were going crazy and they were sowing the seed because their emotions were going tatty. But throughout the world, and it's always men, it's always fucking men. It's always men going, fuck my ego. They're always tossing out. And I'm like, and I always think, yeah, that bruh he never understood his emotions. He needed to speak to someone. That's it. It's always fucking mean.
I think a lot of crazy people in humanity's past could have done well with just having somebody to talk to, and someone who just listened to their problems.
Yeah.
And look, I know I'm taking like in certain ways, but one of the one of the reasons, the slogan of the conference is let's get the conversation going, because let's speak, man. Let's talk about things. If there's something that's jarring you or you're not understanding, or even if you just want to share, let's do it. Let's connect people. Let's talk about things. Like, that's why this podcast is an amazing thing. It's a brilliant thing. You know, it's getting people to talk more. It's highlighting, and your podcast has been highlighting a lot of the individuals in South Africa that's doing great things. And there's a plethora of awesome people.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and maybe I'll come back to that later in the conversation, because I think I will touch on that. How UX South Africa, like how we always what we focus on in relation to South Africa.
I have a question for you about your background a bit, but before I lose my train of thought, I also just want to touch on what we just said around, systems thinking, emotion. And it makes me wonder if that's also why UX is, I'm going to use the word hot topic, because essentially it is kind of like a hot topic trending thing at the moment in a lot of businesses. And we've seen the demand for UX because there's a need for it. But maybe it is because, like you say, we in society and the way humanity has evolved, we're at a space now where we kind of want to marry the tangible and the non-tangible. Yeah. And to do that, it's this space where we're becoming more in touch with emotions, spirituality, and the physical world as well. And UX is kind of that perfect marry of it. And Alfie, you said, you're not quite sure what type of UX designer you are. To me, I've worked with you, you're a brilliant systems thinker. But what you do really well, and that's when you and I work together well, is also when you tap into that empathy, that compassion, the emotional side of UX, you put that in a system. And I think that's what's really nice about UX. It puts emotions in a systems thinking model, which we need, right? Because emotions can be a very tricky thing to navigate. But when we make a system of something, we essentially understand it. And that's what we're kind of doing when we're thinking about an emotional user journey.
Yeah, it's that translation, what we feel is the best translation to improve someone's experience, that can impact them positively.
Yeah.
I always think about those people that create dark patterns intentionally, because when we create designs, our intention is to create a good experience. So does that mean when someone creates a dark pattern, they are intentionally trying to mess us up? Not only steal money from us or get us to do more clicks or clickbait. They are intentionally like, guys, here's an opportunity to mess the world up. Let's go.
This is my pet peeve.
Yeah.
Is UX to help conversion, not users. It defeats the word.
Yeah.
It becomes conversion experience.
Yeah. Let's just convert. Go into mass conversion. I think right now with UX, and over the last few years, maybe before COVID and currently, is in the space I believe I've seen differences in the way people are wanting to evolve themselves or grow themselves in relation to this idea of UX. Because there's for a few years now, there's been the discussion of users versus humans. And then also UX design versus experience design. And then, the different lines of straddling into service design and related, I just lost my train of thought, But I think what I'm trying to say is this conversation is happening, that's allowing people to think, should this be that or shouldn't it be this? Based on how I'm creating and designing, does it make sense? I don't know. So I think all of that is great conversations that we should be having. And those conversations are happening more and more. I think is a great thing.
Which is a good thing. And there's something that you'd mentioned that I wanted to touch on a little bit, and that was sort of like, when we're on the tail end of that rant about sort of like degrees and certifications not necessarily meaning anything in the real world. And then it sort of begs the question, is like, okay, if the degrees are not the place where real learning is happening, where is real learning happening? And I think that's where things like, I'm not just saying this in some sense because, you're the guest on the show today, but things like conferences are the opportunity in some sense for you to expose yourself to new ideas. Yeah. Because, when you're a designer and you're working at a company, let's say you're working at one of the big banks, there's a specific set of people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. And those set of people use similar sort of design frameworks as you. They operate with the same sort of software. You roughly exist in the same sort of environment. It's almost like a closed system. And then when you go to something like a conference, it's sort of like everybody's pulled out of that environment and brought together with all of their baggage. Yeah. And in some sense, it's that bringing together of the baggage, the challenges, the things that you've gotten right, and having a conversation that actually enables learning, because it allows each person to be exposed to something new and also exposed to new people. And so, I guess a question that you might get on the back of that is like, when you think about maybe some of the conversations that you think we should be having, maybe some of the areas where like our development is lacking, at least from what you've seen over the past, 20 odd years in this game, like, what do you think are some of the things that we need to be in some sense addressing or at least furthering the discussion about?
Well, I think maybe let me start at the beginning of the question, because I think that's a brilliant question. I think there's a lot that we should be discussing, and I'm not the expert in relation to discussions, but I think I have a bit of an understanding, and I've seen a bit of a trend based on the conversations and individuals that I've been talking to, that I've had the pleasure of being able to speak to in the industry across the world. So I think maybe let me start with I think the whole degree thing, it's like, I think it has its place in the world. I think that's why we go and we learn and we study and everything. The point that I was making in relation to the degree is that there's so much emphasis that the degree or that piece of paper is the be all and end all. And it deters so many people, because there are people that are not as academic, or just they struggle with academics, but their creativity is off the mark. Like they will eclipse a Sheldon with their creativity. It's like that. But now they get deterred by the fact that, no, I must have this piece of paper in order for me to progress. So then it dulls their passions. And it reduces them to something that they're not. And that is the issue that I have when people say the degree is important or you must have a degree. No, it's important to have, but there's other things also that you must have. And there's other things that can that can take you even further than what that degree can. If you're only going to be of the opinion a degree is end all, then just stay by the degree, just stay by the university. Just be there. Become one of those. Forever. Yeah, you can become one of those posters in at Hogwarts where you're just flowing through the university. Just stay there. But if you're of the opinion that you want, that there's more to it, then let's journey. And then in relation to the discussions, I think research is our topic. Research and the understanding of it. I think more and more people should be talking about what UX research is and should be. I know that there's a few individuals in South Africa and Africa that's trying to get a better grip of it. How do we formalize it? what does the structure of it look like? What do we determine as what are the foundations of research? So those kind of things. And I think the idea of UX versus UI, that is a debate that is going on and on and on and on and on. And as much as we question it, there's been this parallels of there's a UX UI designer, and then you get the product designer, and then you get a UI designer, but they need to have UX experience. So we're creating these different things, but we're also continuing, like my opinion is, we're continuing that to go along and not focus on the other things, like the whole discussion of humans versus users. There's a huge amount of people in the world that advocate for using terminology like humans as opposed to users, because it's more human-centric, because it's more empathetic and not systematic. So I think those discussions, I think the softer side of what UX, UCD, HCI, I think that for a long time, we focus on the foundations and the practicals. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think we should always focus on that, and the world evolves, and I believe that foundations will evolve. But I think there's other things that we should be speaking about, like the softer side of UX, the emotional side of it. And maybe I know that maybe I'm hopping on the emotional side of things, because I feel that there's so many people that's focusing on trying to just do their job, that when they ask the question, how do we make this feel better? How do we invoke more emotion in this experience? Then often the pushback is from the business or from someone else, and they aren't able to justify that thinking, or they're not able to completely translate why they feel it should be that, even though they have the answers, or maybe they have a bit of the answers. They're not feeling as supported. And by that I mean, I can easily go to this reference, and I can easily go to that reference, whether that reference is digital or it's a human format, whether that's a person, human format. I don't know what. Anyway, so I think those kind of discussions, and like this service design is something that's everywhere, but I find that there's so many UX designers that only know the word service, the terminology of service design. They don't know what it constitutes to, how it impacts, what the different processes are. I think I was speaking to you, Alfie, about the double diamond. People just think it's a drawing. It's just a lot of pyramids, and how it can really help to manage and guide. I think so I think it's those kind of conversations, and just based on everything that I've said, I also have an opinion on that, and that is largely because over the last few years, UX has become more formalized and understood. In the beginning, people were just going from graphic design to UX. It was one day, I promise you not. No names. This other guy, he was a graphic designer. I checked these LinkedIn about a month later. He was a specialist UX designer. I phoned him and asked him, when did you become a specialist? I didn't even ask him when he became a UX designer. He's like, so the honest answer to him was, his honest answer was, I saw what UX is, and I think I can do it. So it makes sense for me to call myself a UX designer. And I said, no, it's not. You need to understand why that UX designer role, why it exists, what it constitutes towards. A graphic designer, in the historical sense, is not a UX designer. It will never be, because it's two different things.
And sorry, just on that, one thing that I do want to add is because especially when you're on the graphic design side, it's easy to think that a lot of the things that you do are the same, and that is correct. There are a lot of aspects of graphic design that have parallels in the UX design space. But I think
pushing pixels,
among other things, yes. But one of the things that I think also is important that you sort of mentioned that I want to just highlight a little bit is also understanding why it's a whole role. Like, even though there's so many similarities, there's a role specifically dedicated to this. Yeah. And like, it's something that I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about, and more I'm starting to think that it's almost that you can't think, it's difficult to think with the business mind and the empathy user side at the same time in one person's mind. It's difficult to do justice to both sides. As a single individual. There's always going to be one person that's favoring the business a little more and the business's interests a little more, and one person that isn't. And the reason why there's a whole role dedicated to this is so that there can be a person who understands all of the technical aspects, understands what the business needs are, but still have the user's best interest in mind and getting to know and understand them. And to me, that's one of the things that has been, I guess, a realization along the path, because I mean, I'm also one of the people who just sort of decided to become a UX designer when that wasn't my discipline to begin with, and sort of like 7 or so years down the line now, looking back, I think that has been one of the biggest realizations. Is like, it's not just a set of skills that you have, but it's almost like a role that you play in the cross-functional team. It's like there's one person that is the advocate for this specific way of thinking and like interest.
Completely agree.
I think that's also we already said paper doesn't mean much if you have a qualification, but this is where it becomes so hard as well. And I can see it from the perspective of the people hiring, because there's so many people jumping ship from one discipline to another. And a lot of people are just claiming to be UX designers because they understand the gist of it, so to say. But then how do you actually judge a person's skills? Then you go through these job interviews where you do bloody assessments after assessments after assessments to prove your thinking. And I guess that's also why portfolios and process documentation becomes so immensely valuable for people in our space, because that's what people are looking for. They're not looking for the output. They're looking for, like we've been saying, more than just the output, more than just the design. It is not only output focused. Maybe your role is not also even only to be the ambassador for the user, but also to, in some instances, challenge the rest of the people that's in the room with you. Question them. We have business objectives, and then we have customer or human objectives. And that, again, is also why it does become important for UX designers to, in a sense, understand the business goals and the business objectives. Yes, you're not the one representing the business. You're here for the humans. Woohoo. But how do you go into a room full of business people and try and convince them this is going to feel best for the user if you can't back it with some type of business goal? And yes, that is a trick. I'm going to call it a trick because it is a trick and it works, but it's very important for UX designers to know is if you're going into a room trying to sell a feeling or an intangible thing, make sure you have some money to bring to the table as well. And yes, I mean, as in, how is this going to bring the business money? And go find the stuff that can help you back it, because maybe we have that very heavy intuition to know when something will be better. And it is backed by research, if you've done your research, obviously, and gone through the right processes. But you need to bring it back to business if you want to convince a bunch of business people.
Complete agree.
Very true.
I think also maybe if I want to add something on there, because we're speaking about that process and designing for humans, and it made me think of, there was I've heard it actually a few times, and I think you guys have also heard it. This is the statement where people say, if you're not working with users, then you're not a UX designer. It's always been around that kind of line. And it's not that you're not a UX designer. It's, we can, you can claim to be whatever you want to. If you wanna be a magician, then be a magician, But it's whether you're going to be able to do it accurately, whether you're going to do it, and maybe let me use the word respect. If you're going to respect the role, if you're going to respect the role and why it exists, then fine, claim who you are and grow on that and work forth. That's cool. Whether you have a degree or not. But if you're going to just be this because you think it's going to give you a better payout, and then and adversely create shoddy and crazy, terrible experiences for people, then that's the issue I have. We just become. It's not a cool.
And the thing is, it might not even be intentionally malicious. It's more like you don't know the fights that you should be having.
Yeah, exactly.
When a business person says, "Can't we just quickly?" You should already
no quickies.
The warning signs should be
no quickies. Can we just quickly?
But and that's the thing. Those are the things that you sort of get in the practice of it, and with the experience of actually, in some sense, going through the motions of learning the discipline. Because it really, most people can follow the double diamond process if they just are patient with it. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
But the thing that's actually valuable that the designer brings to the table is how to actually navigate that effectively with the whole team.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's actually really difficult about design, is that, yes, you can design things, but you're bringing a whole group of people along on the journey. Yeah. And in some sense, the value of what you do is measured by how well the passengers along the ride are doing.
Yeah. UX designers and people that create, I believe that most creative, whether you think that you're a UX designer or a UI designer or graphic designer, whatever, design is very much a storytelling role. And what I love about UCD or user experience or service design or all of those associations, it's when we speak about journeys, because for me, then storytelling and creating becomes like a little book. And we're creating something that people want, that they want to enjoy, that they want to interact with, that they want to feel. And I use the word feel very operatively there, because in relation to the idea of a book, most people will always say, I love the feeling of a book, as opposed to saying, oh, I love the feeling of this iPad and the way I read a book on it. I mean, I do it. There's so many people that do it, that when they open a book and you get that whiff of those pages,
you
like,
smell it.
There's just something about it, and that's why it's like when I say feel, it's really how something makes you feel. And UX designers, and I say we because even though I think I never wanted to be a designer, I always wanted to use the knowledge that I've acquired and I want to continue acquiring and accruing to inform the decisions I make as a product designer, as a product manager. Or even if I move into a different role, if I must move to maybe like a completely different industry, I believe that these skills will still benefit me. I think that the UCD, HCI stuff in the world, I think it's needed, man. The world is a crazy place right now, and we need the touchy-feely things to help the world heal itself. Touchy-feely is very important now.
I have a question for you. It's the same question I've been trying to ask this past hour, but continuously get pulled down a different track. But this is the perfect pivot for it. So, I don't think it's any secret how passionate you are about human-centered design. And you just kind of mentioned, why you've chosen not to be a designer yourself. But I want to know more, because you haven't spoken as passionately about managing projects.
Yeah.
Firstly, why didn't you decide to make the jump and intentionally stay in the role of being more of a product manager, product owner? And then second question, how do you use this knowledge and passion and curiosity for human-centered design in your role as a project manager? Because as a project manager, you work closely with business and execution, and how do those marry?
Sure. I think that's really awesome questions. So I guess the reason why I said I never wanted to be a designer was because I have a lot of friends that are designers, and they're always creating, and some of them have creative freedom. But there's parts of the business that hinder them, with these challenges, and that sometimes impacts. So that was part of the thinking why I made the decision was I don't know if I want that. And again, creativity has always been something that I've enjoyed from the beginning, from an early age, and creativity in terms of drawing, sketching, art, and painting. That was part of the thinking as to why I thought, no, I don't want to be a designer. But also, I think one of my strengths is talking nonsense and the ability to talk. I've never. So I am a very shy person. Let me just say that. I'm a shy person, but when I was around, it's just before, about 20 years, I cognitively said I want to challenge myself to not be shy and to never say no. So whenever someone asked me to be an MC at a wedding, I'd first say, yo, and then I'd say, okay. Or if someone said, you need to present these slides, or can you do some slides? I'd be like, yes, man, me, really? But then I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm going to do it. And that was me challenging myself without people thinking this guy's a shy person. And that has helped me to have better conversations with people. I still get shy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I'm now more in control of that. I guess that people will maybe call it an introvert side of me. I know there's this term of ambivert where you introvert, where you an introvert at home and you're an extrovert in the streets. Wait, an introvert in the sheets and an extrovert in the streets. It's something like that. But it's not that, man. It's not that. It's not that. It's really that.
Episode title.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just been I've always just internalized certain things, but challenged myself to be more because I feel I could be more, and then I used that. I thought I enjoy the analytical side of things, and that is not design. Design is not data. There's data points here, and there's data derived, and there's data that can be contrived and managed and created. But I wanted to be more analytical. So I went more into the analysis side of things and the project and product management side of things. Product management is what I wanted to do for the longest time, because for me, the product management, product owner kind of role is very much a centralized role. So for me as a product manager, and it's something that I said at one of my meetings recently, because they were making crazy decisions, and I'm like they weren't making crazy. There was a decision that I found questionable, and I said, as a product manager, my role is to question that on behalf of the users or the humans or the people that's not being represented, because this is affecting them, and that is what I think product managers are. It's a voice for the people that's not in the room. They're working with the engineers, they're working with the architects, they're working with the business, they need to be a voice in the representation of the users and the humans. And I'm using those both terms just in case just people like, he's saying just the whole time. But the product manager is that, if I think of a pie, it's all those tips in the middle, and they're constantly needing to provide information to the different and manage those different slices very carefully. And I enjoyed that because it gives me the opportunity to speak to all these people and to say things that might not be said by those other individuals. So that's one of the primary reasons why I enjoy being in this role.
Yeah.
And then coming back, the second part of the question was, so why did you decide? And how do I use it?
Or how does it?
How do I use it?
Yeah, how do you use it?
So I've been fortunate enough to do, I think there's one, so I've done the CUXA and the CXA, the CUA from HFI. And I'm just speaking about that from an understanding perspective and how I use some of the practical and theoretical learning that was provided to inform some of the things. So there's that kind of stuff and some other course info that I used, because I'm one of those individuals where I'm going to go shoot pool at the university. So I'm not going to apply because I know I'm going to catch on nonsense all the time. So what I did was I read a lot, and I did some of those courses that were shorter because for attention and all of those reasons. But I never did the certifications because it was really a thing of, I don't want to be this. I just want to know this. I just want to know what it's about. I want to use the information. And when designers, UX designers, researchers, when they speak about certain things, I can understand it better, and I can understand it from the point of view that they're projecting based on the information that they've accrued. It's not just a case of me walking into the room and saying, give me an update. Okay, yes, no. So I for me, understanding is very important. And even with like some of my tech friends will say that there's a part of me where I understand the analytical, some of the finer detail in code, where I can interpret certain things, and that is only because I wanted to understand it so that I can inform certain decisions better. Let me give you an example. So I'm not going to name the brand, but we were working on a huge website revamp, and it was complete overhaul, and it was a huge project, and they were working with a very well known agency in South Africa that's been around for at least 12, 13 years. We were, and the leadership was taking direction from them. Now, the menu is green and white, green and white. And I'm like, huh? What? But the reason I could have that what the fuck kind of moment is because I was thinking about accessibility. I was thinking about heuristics. I was thinking about legibility. I was thinking about the experience. And that is, if I never learned or I never read about any of those things, I would then just be another sheep, where they would be like, okay, cool, this big brand is telling me it must be black and white regardless of whether it's going to hurt people's eyes or it can't be interpreted or anything like that. I'd just be like, okay, cool, let's sign it off. But then I said, no, man, this doesn't work. Are you guys crazy? How does this work? And there were individuals that were frustrated with me because I said, no. And they were like, why? You're hindering things. And I said, this is going to cause more issues than anything else. Not only from a legibility and a visual perspective, but also it can impact the brand. Because it really is a huge brand. So I pushed back, and they said, no, we're gonna veto you. And I'm like, no, not yet. I'm gonna give you more. So I contacted Marley still. I remember I contacted Marley Ritter. I'm like, Marley, give me a lifeline. I need more ammo. And that is the power, man. If you know who these people are, they're speaking about these things in our country, then you can do that. You can say, and that's exactly what I did. I'm like, Marley, I know this about heuristics and accessibility. This is the issue. Please tell me what else I should be considering. And she is brilliant in accessibility. She's an amazing individual when it comes to accessibility. And she told me, look at this, look at that. And she said, I've got a good understanding, and there's a lot that I've said that she would say as well, but I should just add this as well. yo, I promise you, it was a novel, that email. I had data in there, I had links to everything. Because I wanted to fight. I'm like, no, man, no, this is a stupid decision. And you know what? After seeing that email, you know what the response was? Okay, let's go with it. I'm like, this month. Because you're making me.
Do you mean go with the bad design?
No, let's go with what he's suggesting. So yes, I believe the word that I want to use is I won the battle. But I was like, if you were so hard against it, then why? If I think that I wasn't, the only difference between what I was saying in the moment was that it was written in an email and there was a bit more detail to justify it. So I think to come back to the question, I use the knowledge of what I've learned in relation to the space and the industry to inform the role that I'm in, so that I can better work with the individuals that's also working on this project. I want to collaborate, I want to communicate, and I want to understand. I don't only just want to do.
Yeah.
That's very important with me. When it comes, teamwork is important, man. Teamwork is so important.
Teamwork.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work.
Very true. And I think like we've covered a lot of things, especially in the actual doing of design and in your role as a product manager, some of the aspects that you're sort of aware of. But I almost want to take a bit of a step back and almost put design to the side and focus a little bit more on conference for a little bit.
Sure.
Because we've got the conference coming up, and there's a lot of people who I'm sure are listening that will actually see us there on the day, which I'm super keen for. But let's think a little bit about specifically the role that you see this conference playing in the big picture, either from the perspective of what would you like to see happen with the conference long term, or what are some of the things that you're trying to achieve by this conference? Because like conferences take a lot of effort to do. I think as attendees or even speakers, you only really get like the closing 10% of the effort.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell me a little bit more about, like, from your perspective as the organizer, like, firstly, what do you hope, either for the event or something that you hope that it achieves, and then also, can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've learned along the way, sort of playing that role in the industry in some sense, whether it's experiences, organizing things, people that you met that surprised you around it, like just some of the backstory. Yeah.
So what I've learned, there's some good and bad answers there, I think, but I'll be honest, and I'll come back to that afterwards. What I hope to achieve from the conference is people pulling through in person and talking. Like, as much as they obviously, as organizers, we want the event to be an success. We want it to be a great experience. We want to provide, we want to tick those boxes for people. But my selfish objective would be, the answer would be for people to speak, to engage, to network. COVID, over the last 2.5 years, 3 years, we haven't had the opportunity to meet in person at these conferences or at events. They're starting to pop up more and more. And I think 2023 will be a big year for events, because this year was really people feeling their way through. I mean, usually for UX Southafrica, we do a Cape Town leg and a Johannesburg leg. But this year we've only done a Johannesburg leg because we want to we want to understand how. Sorry. But we're planning something big for Cape Town.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying, and we want people to engage more. I think what I would love to see is people to say, not only say, how can I get involved? Like, I'd like people to say, I think this can be improved, and this is what I can do. You know, it's challenging for any organizer, whether you're in South Africa or in the world, to hear people say, I think I can help you and make it better. Okay, cool. And then what? We need to be speaking about the specifics because we're always thinking about making things better, but we don't have the time. There was this one thing that Phil said one day. We were speaking outside of a meetup one night, and we were speaking about apps, and then we started speaking about the FNB app, and then he said something that I'll never forget also, because I want to bring that back to UX South Africa. And he said, we were going through the app, and he opened it and he said, this is shit, but it's functional. We can improve the UI, we can make it better, but the experience, the objective is quick, and you can do what you need to. That's when the FNB app launched, and it was the craze. People were converting; they were moving from Investec to FNB just because the app was answering their questions. So with regards to the UX South Africa site and UX South Africa, we want to improve things, but we also recognize that there's certain things that we can focus on, and as organizers, we're limited. And if we can work with people, let's work with people. Let's have the conversation. But to answer the question as black and white as possible, I would love to see people networking, speaking, approaching brands that are there, because there will be brands. I mean, UXSA has been absolutely phenomenal in trying to be present at the conference. The reason why I'm saying that specifically is that big banks and big brands, when it comes to engaging at the conference, they don't do it as easily. That's what I've learned over this. So coming back to the second part of the question, they don't do it as easily as what they say. They will say, we evangelize this and we do this, and they just want to throw money at it, and they want to have their brand represented, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's honestly nothing wrong with that. It means exposure. But what's going to drive more value is if individuals and brands speak more, collaborate more. The reason why I'm highlighting UXSA is because they are a huge brand, and they are literally saying they've said we want to be there and we want to speak to people, and I'm going to hold them to it. But the fact that they said that without me asking them, or without me even, they said it before I even thought of it, I was like, okay, something's changed. There's been a shift in some kind of force. The big brand wants to speak now. Previous years, big brands like that didn't want to be at events because of conflict or conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so we can't learn and we can't share and we can't grow and we can't hear what you're doing because you and this other person had a bad breakup. So what? So we have to suffer. And the thing is, the big brands are doing great things because they have these. They create these little teams. They create teams. I'm not talking about squads and all of that. I'm just saying, as an umbrella term, they create this team and it's specialized and they focus and they solve amazing problems. But they're hindered because they can't speak about it or because there's another big brand in the audience. And I would love to challenge brands and say, change your narrative, man. Speak more, share more, and do more. Don't just say we are doing. Be there. Be at the conferences and engage with the people, man. Even if it shouldn't be seen as a poaching exercise. And just to quickly say on that, when it comes to the conferences, we obviously, when we speak to sponsors and brands, we always say, this is not a poaching exercise. But we do want brands to engage with people. Whether people go and work with that brand or not is up to them. But we want to learn. It's not just about individuals sharing their stories about case studies and what they've learned. I think big brands doing more is very important, especially now when we need to be sharing. So, did I answer the whole question? I can't.
You did. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
but I find
there was one more thing I just wanted to say.
What I find so. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, in relation to what I've also learned over the last few years. So that was the brands and engagement part of things. And when it comes to individuals, what I also learned is that there's many individuals that want to share, but they're shy, or they fear that stage presence. And if there are individuals like that who's ever listening to this podcast, I'm happy to work with them and help them, with stage presence and all of that. But the bad side of that scenario is not the bad side. The negative side of that scenario is there's many individuals that have a loud voice, but they're not saying the best kind of things, and they're being heard more, and it's challenging trying to manage that, and it's something that's been around for decades, right? I would like to challenge people to take the stage, to share, whether it's at a meetup or not. And that's the last thing I'll touch upon before, if it's okay, Stephanie, is what do we want to do? What do we want to do more of? We want to collaborate more, engage more, and next year we want to create smaller little sessions where we can talk more.
Yeah.
Whether that is sessions and whether it's a meetup or whether it's just a quick, hey guys, there's something happening on Thursday at this place, pull through ever. This is if it's spontaneous, it's spontaneous, but we want to do more collaborative chats. But in order to do that, I think we also want to work more. I think we want to work more with the community.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I wanted to add on what you said about challenging big brands, and I think we definitely should be challenging them to share more about what they're doing, their process, what they're working on. Because generally, big brands don't want to share what they're busy working on because it's some type of state secret, and they want to be the first to launch this feature and, have the competitor edge. But what they don't understand is, well, firstly, these people jump between banks like there's no tomorrow. Firstly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, the sooner one of your competitors does what you do, the sooner you will get the data bigger and better and confirmation from real users and real humans if that's working or not. So it benefits everyone actually to just be a little bit more transparent and stop keeping everything a state secret until it's release day, and then you might retrospectively not actually get what your objective was because now people don't use it the way you think or how it should have been used.
I completely agree. It's conversation. Conversation is important. It's a good thing. And that's why I'm super stoked that again there's a few brands on board that's really trying to drive conversation, that are really trying to engage, they're really wanting to speak to the individuals or community. And I think that's the beginning of a lot, man. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to achieve what we want to immediately, but as long as we start that conversation.
No, I think you are right. And as we sort of just speaking, I was thinking a little bit about a little bit more about what the role that things like UX South Africa and other events sort of play in the world or in their industry. And then I spent a little bit of time thinking about the gaming industry, because I think they've been doing events for a long time. And one of the things that's always great about them, if you think about it a little bit less about the games and more think about it more about how the events enable the community, you always get all of the game developers talking about their latest releases. They're talking about some of the underlying technology. You might have Unity do a presentation about the latest rendering engines. You almost have there's different levels of engagement. There's a level of the individuals and the peoples who are actually there engaging with the stalls and so on. But it's also an opportunity for the brands to almost be this is us and this is what we're doing. And the interesting thing that happens when you start to have those conversations is that, in a sense, the industry learns faster. Because, for example, an example that I think is actually happening in South Africa at the moment is how data relates to design. Yeah. Because one of the things that I found quite a lot of, I've got a couple of friends that have moved to Europe, and one of the biggest learnings that they've described about the difference between the South African space and the European space is design is much more data driven that side, and it's a lot more focused on experimentation. And I think that's a thing that, in some sense, South Africa is still learning. Yeah. And maybe that comes back to the point, Iggy, that you mentioned about sort of research being one of the main topics that we need to understand. Because when you get into research, you eventually realize that at the end of the day, the research gets translated into some form of data.
Yeah.
whether that's, wrapped up in a nice presentation, or it's in an Excel spreadsheet, or if it's a Google Analytics account. At the end of the day, it becomes some kind of data. And so I think there's really a lot of growth from the perspective of organizations and the community, and especially the big banks. Because another thing I think about is not even just the banks, the big companies in general, they have the funding to do some of the scientific work relating to design that some of the smaller companies don't have access to.
Yeah.
And conferences and these types of meetups are the opportunity for that knowledge, in some sense, to permeate the industry. And it's easy to think that it's your competitors at that event who are going to steal your secrets and so on.
Yeah.
But if you even think a little bit further down the line, it's also your vendors that are coming to that event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how much money could you
employees.
save? That too. How much money in training and education can you save by just making that knowledge freely accessible, so that the people who work with you get to understand how you work and the lessons you've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And so I'm very keen to see how the sort of space of events evolves over the next couple of years for design.
I mean, I think there's going to be a lot. There's already lots of discussions happening. I think Don Norman is doing an interesting thing where he's considering or speaking about, he's speaking about, is one of the key drivers of this. It's called the Future of Design. I'll try to send you the link, and it's really when we from what I understand, he wants to flip the state of design. Well, that's what he said. He said he questions the state of design in the world. And I think that is an interesting thing, man. It's an interesting perspective, because he's basically saying there's something wrong, and this is what he's seeing based on a thought leader, because he is a thought leader, based on his understanding and a few like-minded individuals that have a good understanding, and they really want to challenge that and see where this goes. And things like that is amazing, because that is completely experimental. We're saying for all of this time, and we've created, where we are now is based on the historical growth of design. And he's basically saying, whoa. At some point we went in a direction that I think we should maybe pull back from. And what him and these individuals, and there's people globally that's working on this project, that they're looking at that and so much more, that perspective. So I think doing more things like that, where we're challenging things in the world, is a good thing. With UX South Africa, we can do that through the people that we work with and the speakers and individuals at the conference. And we can try, going forward, we want to try more and more to understand how do we contribute to a narrative that is more engaging and collaborative. We haven't cracked it. I don't think we're close to it, but we do want to. And in order to do that, we need to speak to more individuals. And again, that is something that we want to do at this conference. We want to see how we can get that conversation going more. With UX South Africa, something that I wanted to mention earlier is, when we think about all of that and in relation to all of these things that we've been speaking about, one of the things that we always want to focus on is highlighting the talent in South Africa. Who are the thought leaders? Who's doing things? And if you're not a thought leader, who's moving in that direction? There's always this idea of that conferences must always show the best. They must always have the big names. And in South Africa, there's another narrative of who's the international names coming over and who's going to be there and who's going to tell us. And
the secrets.
And these people, they do amazing things, whether they further in Africa or abroad, but it doesn't necessarily solve the challenge of the South African audience. And what we're designing for the South African audience. If you're working for an offshore company, it's cool. Then focus on everything and you can create for that audience. But if you're creating something specifically for a target market or an audience that is South African, then there's certain things that you need to also consider. especially in relation to design trends. So, with highlighting local talent, it can become a challenge because there's a perception in the community that this is another South African and we know it. No, there's amazing individuals. This podcast has highlighted amazing individuals, and there's so many more. And that is, I've challenged brands, and I'm challenging individuals. Go and do research. Don't only think I love Phil. He's amazing. I love his stories, but get to know other names. Reach out and speak to the people. Don't wait for conferences to step up and walk to people or say, the majority of these people have been graphing and have been pushing and trying to learn also. So if you approach them, it's very rare that they're not going to respond. I guarantee that.
This is proof of it.
Yeah, I guarantee that you're going to get someone, or that the person that you want to speak to will respond. I want, maybe let me do something, and it's not tooting any horn or anything, but I think it's a cool thing. So one of my heroes has always been Don Norman, in relation to design, and we were fortunate enough to have Don Norman at the conference, not in person but through virtually, and it was we were the only people to have him in Africa, and he was like, and that was awesome, because that was a cool moment for me. But the reason why he agreed, so I just blindly approached him a while back, and then we were speaking, but it was me trying to sell him. And then at some point, his PA was like, I'm not sure if Don would be interested in this, because he was involved and then PA started taking over. And then I just went back and I said, this is why UX Southafrica exists, what we want to do about the community, what we're trying to achieve, and more than anything, the community would definitely love to engage with him. Everything that I said was about the community. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about UX Southafrica. It was purely community. And then he responded after that, and he said, I like this. I like the community angle. I want to get involved. And then we spoke, and then my thing was, okay, can you do a 20-minute talk? And he said, no, I want to engage with him for 2 hours at least. And I'm like, okay, let's go.
Wow.
The thing that sold him was engaging, collaborating, speaking. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see that his talk is just fielding questions, people asking questions, and he's just going the whole time. Wow. And I think in relation to all that I'm saying is, take a chance. Don't be afraid to approach your heroes. Don't think The Rock and the Kardashians are not the most influential people. They're doing things in their own respective right, in their own niches. But if you are in design, then don't make references to the Kardashians. Make references to your design heroes. And if you want to challenge yourself, then approach them.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That's amazing.
I think it's honestly as simple as that.
I do want to take my hat off to you guys and just express a bit of admiration and gratitude, or really for taking that approach, for, like you said, not, challenging our own community really to stop thinking that conferences should be these international people or the best people in our field. So we can rather hear from people who are actively on the ground, because a lot of the time the people who are at the top of our industry aren't really even on the ground anymore, because they're probably up there running businesses, making a lot more high-level roles and decisions now.
Yeah.
But I think that is it's a humbling thing to hear that you guys are taking that approach, and I just want to virtually applaud it. Then we have a section in the podcast, and that means we're coming to a close.
Okay.
where we get a question from the previous guest
Oh.
to our current guest.
Snap.
And this
Here we
guest had no idea who you were going to be.
This is the
I
Kanye
like
moment.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
So we have a question from Anthony, the Kenyan artist Alfie referred to earlier, which is our previous guest.
Yeah.
And you can take a few moments to answer it. And his question is, what is one piece of art, whether that is music, like a song, a painting, a poem, one piece of art that made you feel something profound and had a really profound effect on you as an individual?
It'll always be sound. Always. Without a doubt.
Sound.
Yeah.
Always.
Wow.
So as much as I love seeing art and looking at art, and I appreciate art, I mean, there's so many pieces. My favorite piece of art will always be the creation, and the pieces in the Sistine Chapel, you know. So I've always been fascinated by it, to some degree mesmerized by that art, and I love that Renaissance period kind of art as well. But sound will always trump it, because sound invokes more emotion in me than touch or anything visual. When I hear, I immediately get transported either to a memory, a moment, or I start thinking about what I'm hearing, and then it creates some form of scenario that I start picturing, and it's never the other way around. I never look at the painting and I think, yeah, that's the sounds that I heard. Or I can't, like, if you look at this painting behind me, as beautiful as it is, that and it's about a big tree, and it's supposed to invoke this idea of there's a wind and so on, but I can't hear that. But and when I say the adverse, when I hear a song, I get immediately transported. So it will always be audio, and I use it in different ways. When I really want to concentrate, then it will always without a doubt, Autumn Vivaldi, and then always, and then the other seasons can just follow through, and then it will be Moonlight Sonata. There's so many pieces that I love. I love classical, but it's those two pieces that really that get me into that visual focus. And then there's so many other things, man. Like art in its auditory form has impacted my life in different ways as well. You know?
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah,
Sure.
I hope that answers the question.
Nice answer. Yeah, definitely.
And I need to think about the question as well.
But we'll give you time to do that.
I actually have a question. So should I ask it now?
Why not? Go for it.
Okay. So my question for the next speaker would be, if you can impact the world positively, what would you do? And that is beyond the current. I'm just putting in. I just saw that my machine's unplugged. I'm getting a warning message. I'm like, when did I unplug this thing? What is going on? I'm frantically fixing. So it would be something like that, you know. If you could improve the state of the world immediately, if you think that there's something that can improve it immediately, what would it be and what would you do?
That's a very good question. I really like that.
Yeah, it's for me. It's not about design or anything about. It's just in general. I think the last 3 years has impacted a lot, you know, and people in many ways. And for me, the state of the world is a sad thing to see. You know, in many respects, different countries and different arguments that are happening. You know, not necessarily the war kind of stuff. It's all the other stuff. So I think there's a lot of healing that's needed in the world. But obviously, in order to heal, we need to speak.
Yeah.
You know, we need to have those conversations.
Definitely. I think that is a very profound and great way for us to kind of bring this conversation to its closing stages. I think, first of all, before we do the thanks and goodbyes, I think, like, I really want to commend you and Theo and the rest of the team around UX South Africa on what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Because it always takes one person to just decide to, in a sense, give up all of their extra free time for a couple of months to bring something like that to fruition, or maybe even a couple of years. And so, as a person in the industry, I'm grateful for that.
Thank you.
But then I'm also grateful for the fact that you're willing to take the time, like in these leading few weeks before the event, to actually chat with us, and spend like a good, hour and a half shooting the breeze.
It's all good.
So thank you.
It's all good. I mean, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation, guys, more than anything else. I appreciate you guys taking the time to speak to me. So, it's one of those things where I think that it aligns with the slogan. Let's get the conversation going.
Amazing.
And maybe if I can just say, I'd really like as many people to pull through to the conference, because again, we want to speak. We really want to get people to converse, and even if it means people come, they attend the conference and they're like, I have questions, or can you help me with this? Let's do that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Thank you for setting this up. Thank you for the conversation, guys. Yeah, it's been amazing.
It's been a pleasure. And maybe just then, before we do wrap up, where can people sort of find out a little bit more about the conference, about some of the things that you're doing? Are there any social links that we want to plug up? Sure.
So, I can share it with you, but it's all, so UXSouthAfrica.com, UX South Africa on Twitter, UX South Africa on Insta, UX Craft Conference on Facebook, and on YouTube. If you want to watch any previous videos, then obviously YouTube. But that's everywhere. I would say there's lots of noise happening now. If you want an immediate reference, obviously the UXSouthAfrica.com site, but Twitter, there's lots happening on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So we definitely, we're obviously we're trying to be as accessible as possible.
And how much longer do we have for ticket sales? Are they open until the event?
So ticket sales will so we've just sold out on all the virtual seats. So we've reached our cap on the virtual seats. So we've got a few more workshop seats available. And I think the workshops are amazing because we've got great facilitators. We do have, and I'm excited for it. But so we've got those tickets available, and they will most likely close around, if we don't reach the cap, then the ticket sales will close on the 4th. Yeah, most likely close on the 4th.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And if people are listening to this, then it's still in advance of the 4th, so you can still buy your ticket.
Yeah, 4th of November.
I'm sure we'll drop all of the relevant links in the description of the video. Definitely show up, come say hi. I will be there. You will be there. A whole bunch of other people will be there. Definitely pull through.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be one to remember. And also, COVID is over. Oh, COVID is over. Yeah. We can go out into the wilds again. There's no time like the present to get involved in the community.
Can I maybe just plug an interesting point quickly? So the conference it's obviously happening from the 8th, 9th, and 10th November. It's a 3-day event, workshop on the 1st, conference days on the 2nd and 3rd. There's 16 talks, and also it's our community partner is Microsoft. Again, the Microsoft brand has said they want to get involved. UX is not the primary focus. We all know that. Yeah. But they've said we want to get involved. We want to start speaking to the community, and that is a huge thing. And I say it in that way because, again, coming back to the point earlier, the big brand wants to get involved and say we want to speak. It's not that we want to drive and change. We just want to see, let's have a conversation. So all of those reasons, pull through, join us, come chat, let's have some coffee. Oh, there's going to be a coffee station as well. There's going to be a dedicated coffee station.
think that'll convert a lot of people.
Has to be.
Yeah. And it's going to be good coffee.
All right.
So, I mean, guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate the talk. I appreciate what you guys are doing to get more conversations going. I hope more people take a lead from you guys. Yeah. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And for everybody listening, thank you for this hour and a bit that you've given us. And I hope you have a fantastic, whether it's the morning, the evening, the afternoon, have a good one, whatever it may be.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys. Thank you so much.